Hi and welcome to the Geek Legion of Doom. This is a horror movie review and I'll be having a look at the movie The Haunting of Helena, which is also known as Fairytale. So the movie here focuses on a woman who is a kind of this single mother whose husband has sort of left her to go off with her life, with partying with various different women and all around the world and whatnot. And she's this British woman and she's kind of left with this kind of young daughter to bring up by herself. And she kind of moves into this sort of old apartment building where there seems to have been some sort of mysterious and kind of probably sinister part to it. Now her daughter is kind of that age where she's sort of starting to kind of, you know, lose her sort of first sort of kid's teeth and things like that, and it apparently sort of awakens this kind of spirit of this woman who was sort of tortured probably, you know, nearly 100 years ago or whatever by her husband for smiling at another man, and his husband sort of ripped this woman's sort of teeth out and sort of locked her in this cupboard to die. So it's really kind of a kind of tooth fairy tale, really, and that this kind of this sort of spirit really is kind of haunting this kind of young family, primarily the kind of young daughter who basically is trying to sort of give this ghost teeth, ultimately her own teeth, and kind of buys teeth off her sort of classmates at school and things like that. However, it turns out this ghost takes a bit more of an interest in her and even follows the mother and daughter into this kind of sort of, I guess, psychiatric hospital in the sort of second half of the film, and ultimately sort of kills anyone who really sort of threatens the kind of the relationship that the ghost and sort of this young girl has. So it's kind of a very cheap kind of ghost story, really. Now, what I mean by cheap, there's a couple of things that I'll point out that is probably quite negatives. The special effects are really fairly minimal here, I would have to say. Now, they are a mixed bag. They do use a reasonable amount of CGI. The kind of first time you'll see it is there's a sort of scene at the beginning of the movie where they have a car crash, and it's possibly one of the worst car crashes I think that I've seen in a movie, where, you know, where this woman sort of just looking at herself in the mirror and ends up having this sort of CGI car crash. And when we kind of see the sort of spirit and the kind of what the spirit does, it really is kind of more CGI. They do use sort of practical effects, but where you kind of see the ghost first of all, it's actually in a fairly well lit scene, and it doesn't look all that great because I think the lighting is simply just too light for it to be effective. It just looks like a kind of a woman with sort of white makeup when we kind of see her properly. And they do a couple of quick cuts and it's kind of like jump scares and things like that. So there are a couple of shots where it looks effective, but to be honest, the actual sort of ghostly effects aren't particularly scary. This is not a particularly scary film. It's not a gory film as such. The kills that this sort of ghost does, she tends to use these sort of flies or whatever to somehow eat her victims, but you never really see any particular gore. There's a couple of suggested sort of gore scenes where we sort of see blood on the floor, but it's not a particularly gratuitous movie in regards to that. It does have, I guess, maybe a kind of creepy atmosphere, but unfortunately there's one major thing that lets this film down that kind of spoils any sort of good points this has got, and that is the acting. The acting in this film is absolutely atrocious. So the main people you're going to see on the screen here are the mother and daughter. Now, I've not seen the kind of the woman. I think her real name is Harriet, the actress's name, but really terrible actor. I mean, she's obviously been cast on her looks, because she kind of looks like a supermodel, I have to say. You know, very, very attractive, but she can't act for shit. And it's absolutely painful to listen to her sort of deliver some of these lines. And I read a couple of reviews, and they've kind of said, you know, the acting ain't that good. It's terrible. I mean, it's just awful. It so takes you out of the film. And I have to say that the daughter, the young girl, her acting ain't any good either. Now, maybe you can't sort of pick on kids necessarily, but I've seen kid actors, you know, that are fairly decent, and this girl is pretty crap herself. I guess some of the medical staff who are kind of just supporting characters and really have that little screen time, sort of Italian actors mainly, probably aren't too bad. The husband's not all that of a fantastic actor either. So unfortunately, the acting in this movie, when you compare it with kind of like the minimal and fairly cheap gore effects and special effects, it really doesn't make for a particularly good movie. Now there are some interesting ideas here, I will say, but and on top of all of that, it's quite a slow film, so it's kind of boring, is what I have to say. It's really two sort of very sort of distinct halves of this movie. Kind of the first half is I guess this couple in this sort of house, being sort of warned by the kind of the creepy neighbour and what have you, and the sort of second half of the movie takes place in this hospital. Now there kind of is a sort of a twist ending, which is, I'm not going to sort of tell you about in this review, obviously, but I think some people may like it, some people will kind of be put off by it, but you know, that's up to a matter of opinion, I suppose. But overall, I have to say this film didn't really have all that many sort of positive points for me to review it. It wasn't certainly the worst movie I've seen in this kind of like sort of haunted house B-movie genre, but there's nothing really I can say that, oh, it did this particular thing well, but it really didn't. There's not anything that I don't think this film did well. There was a couple of maybe okay bits, like I say, kind of maybe some of the atmosphere was quite good, I guess the music was okay, but unfortunately it had so many negative points. I'm going to have to give this one a 3 out of 10. So have you seen it? Let me know what your thoughts are. Leave me a comment and I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.